Hey everybody, I'm nutritionist Dr. Mike Roussel, and in this episode of the Dr. Mike Show, we are going to talk about 5 key strategies that you can use starting right now to help you win the mental battle with your diet. All right, so welcome to today's show. I love talking about the mental side of nutrition and of healthy lifestyles or performance and achieving athletic, benchmarks, whatever it is that you're trying to do. I think the mental side is so interesting. I always think that when I got my PhD, which I think my wife reminded me was 12 or 13 years ago, last week, couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I defended my dissertation. But one of the things that I will always think when I think back on that time is everything that we knew about nutrition back then. If we just applied that to today's life, everyone would still be so much healthier. So it's not so much a knowledge thing. We don't know what we need to do, but it's more of a mental and a lifestyle thing. Like, how do we actually implement the things that we want to implement? So that's why I think episodes like today's, like, how do we win in nutrition and activity are one in that on the ground, hand-to-hand combat. You're in this situation. You need to choose what you're going to eat. What are you going to do? And you're in those situations time and time again during the day in and day out. And so what you do during those moments makes such a big deal. And that's why I think the mental side of healthy living is so important and also so underrated. So I'm really excited to kind of get into that today. Before we get into the show, I want to remind you, if you are, hopefully you're listening to the podcast, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube, you subscribe to the YouTube channel, or you've subscribed to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, however you listen to your podcasts. But if you haven't, you want to head over to MikeRoussel.com and subscribe to the newsletter, because what we're doing every Friday, we send out a newsletter with the show notes, things like that. But I'm also going to start adding some exclusive information and some added information just for newsletter subscribers. So if you want to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of these 5 tips that we're going to talk about today, you want to make sure you go to MikeRoussel.com. You can check out the whole new site, but subscribe to the email list, get on the newsletter, and you will get all the new content and exclusive content that comes out with every show. I'm going to kind of flesh it out. Sometimes there'll be some worksheets, there'll be additional information, some more analysis, so some research, some more practical tips, recipes, all sorts of things that you could use to help kind of further enhance the content that we talk about in the podcast. All right. So head over to MikeRoussel.com, enter your email address, and you can make sure that you get that information moving forward. But let's get into the topic for today. And you've probably heard me talk about this before, that this idea, there's nutrition and there's food logistics, right? So these are kind of the 2 parts of nutrition. Nutrition is protein, carbohydrates, fats, calories, portions, all that sort of thing. Food logistics is how do we get the right foods in front of us to eat at the right times, regardless of where we are. Now, when I started my nutrition journey, I was really focused on the nutrition part, right? I was into it through sports, athletics, through bodybuilding. In graduate school, we ran controlled feeding studies. So these were all situations where the choice, so much was taken out of it. The food logistics were taken out of it because the level of commitment was so high. If you know anything about the bodybuilding community, it's such a community of such strict and high discipline from a training and nutrition perspective, very disciplined. So following your nutrition plan or not following your nutrition plan, it's not a question. It's just what you do. And then in controlled feeding studies, so this is it's a special kind of nutrition research study where you basically, as a study participant, the people running the study weigh, measure, and portion foods for you. And you show up, you eat the meals that they prepare, they give you a cooler. So when I was running these studies and helping run these studies at Penn State, we had this metabolic kitchen. We had a cook. We had a chef there that was overseeing all of it. We had a variety of other graduate and undergraduate dietetic students who were following recipes, making meals, weighing and portioning, putting things in coolers. And so if you were in the study, you showed up in the morning, you sat down, you ate your breakfast, or you weighed yourself. You sat down, you ate your breakfast, you took your cooler, and you went off. And your cooler had snacks, lunch, dinner, come back the next day and repeat. On the weekends, you would come in, you'd get a much bigger cooler, right? And so all your food was there for the weekends. So the choice is really taken out of it. And because of that, we had, I believe it was like 94, 96% adherence to the nutritional plan. So very, very high adherence. And one of the reasons those kinds of research studies are run is because researchers want to be able to know, well, if someone eats this, if we control everything and they eat this specific diet, or they eat, sometimes like just the food choice might be different. Like if we eat 1.5 ounces of pistachios or 3 ounces of pistachios versus a snack of pretzels, what happens? And in mine, it was like a whole dietary pattern, but it was focused on lean beef. So we ate this DASH dietary pattern, but then if you ate lean beef instead of chicken or poultry, what would happen to cholesterol levels if we literally kept the macronutrients the same and the types of fats were the same, but the food choices were different? We're trying to figure out, was there anything else in that nutrient package of lean beef that would make a difference, as like a negative impact on lipid profile? And really what we found, we didn't. The higher protein group, as I've talked about a bunch, actually had reductions in blood pressure, even though they weren't even hypertensive. So it was really cool. But anyway, those kinds of research studies are very good at giving you cause and effect, right? Because there's no choice about eating other things. So then I left, and it was probably the biggest shock from a nutrition perspective was I went to Manhattan. I became friends with Joe Dowdell, who are still really good friends to this day. Joe was running Peak Performance at that time in Manhattan and started doing nutrition consulting there. And if you know anything about people that live in Manhattan, like, they don't cook. Nobody cooks. So it was like the total opposite, because all food was eaten out, delivered, snacked, picked up at the corner bodega, like any of that stuff. So it was the total opposite of a controlled feeding study, kind of what I was used to. So it was really interesting then. I came to appreciate this idea of food logistics. Like, how do we get the right foods in front of people at the right times? How do we manipulate food service, restaurant ordering to get us close to those calorie things, those calorie targets and macronutrient targets that we want? But the other piece of it was, when you're in this situation where you're eating out a lot more, there's not as much set rhythm to your nutrition, is there are so many more opportunities to go astray, right? To not stay on the plan, to not follow the path, to say, I'm going to start this on Monday. And that really brings us to today's show, is talking about what are some of these key strategies that you can use mentally to help stick to the path, so you can stay on the path. So let's get into it. The first one was from a book that I recently reread, called Wherever You Go, There You Are, by Jn Kabat-Zinn, who he was really his first book was Full Catastrophe Living. He really pioneered mindfulness-based stress reduction in a clinical setting in America. So how to use mindfulness and meditation to treat disease, right? Like all kinds of things, from blood pressure to stress to variety. If you think of how the seed of mindfulness research and meditation research and medicine in America was from this physician. And so this book is a great book, and very short chapters, kind of like little excerpts that he's written over the years. And one of them, there's a short chapter, and the title of the chapter is This Is It. And it talks about, there's a cartoon from the New Yorker, and there are two monks sitting there. And the older monk looks at the younger monk, who kind of has this, this questioning look on his face. And he says, "What are you looking at? This is it." And they're just sitting there, right? The idea is like, that's what it is. There's nothing magical about meditation. Like, you're just going to sit there. That is it. But when I started thinking about that, and I tell you personally, this kind of had like this interesting kind of / profound impact on me, because ever since I read that, as I go through my life, I think, this is it. Like, this is the moment. Kind of the idea, this is it. And that phrase is meant to remind you that whatever you're doing is the only thing that matters, because this is what we have, right? And so that's kind of this mental reminder that I'm always using now, that says, hey, whatever I'm doing, this is it. Like, enjoy it, engage, focus, and really be in that moment. But from a nutrition perspective, why I think this is so great is because mentally we are so quick to say, I'll start next meal. Like, I'm going to just have this drink, or I'm going to have this food, and I'll start on Monday, I'll start tomorrow, I'll start at lunch, like whatever it is. Like we're always looking to move down the start date, like one more day. But the problem is, or one more meal just out of the current moment. But the problem with that is when we get to the next moment, what we've done is we've created a habit of just pushing off our commitment to whatever our eating plan is. And then you can find yourself, let's say you wanted to lower your blood pressure, right? All of a sudden you find yourself, you're 6 months down the road saying, well, I'll start on Monday, I'll start next week, I'll start, when it's not a party, and you keep moving it forward and it never happens, right? Or if you're an athlete, I'm going to start my off-season training. I need a couple weeks off, or I can't do it now because I'm busy. I have this other commitment. All of a sudden, it's in season again. And so, why I really don't, and I've talked about this in different ways, like don't wait till Monday. Start now, because so many people say, "Oh, I'll start my diet on Monday after the weekend," right? Why it's so, I think, detrimental is it creates the habit of pushing off to the next moment. And sort of saying, well, this moment doesn't matter, right? But if we can remind ourselves with this phrase, this is it, like this is the moment that matters. Like you're going to sit down and you're going to order something off the menu, or you're going to pull something out of your refrigerator. What are you going to pick? Like this is it. And you're going to build your physique. You're going to lose the weight that you want. You're going to lower your cholesterol. You're going to get faster and support recovery in this moment with this meal. And if we can use that phrasing of this is it to remind us of the importance of right now and what we're doing right now, it works directly against the idea of I'll start on Monday, I'm going to push this off, and really brings us to, well, if this is it and this is the most important meal that I'm going to have, what should be in that meal? What choice should I make? So simple thing to do, say to yourself, when you feel like you're kind of hemming and hawing about the decision to make, just remind yourself, this is it, this moment, this decision with your nutrition, it matters a lot. And make the decision that you want to make for whatever you're achieving your goal is. Okay? So tell yourself that this is it. The next thing to think about is I have often found over the years that clients get into a rhythm, right? And I have the same rhythm in my life. There's the weekday rhythm, there's the weekend rhythm. But weekdays, weeknights, depending on what your life is, I think it's important not to rely on the rhythm so much, because there can be so much disruption to the rhythm. It's not 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, something else. Like it's generally not that clean cut, especially if you have children or if you commute, if you have evening commitments and daytime commitments. Like life has an accelerated speed and it's continuing to accelerate. And if we rely on, I just need to get into my normal rhythm, then everything's going to be fine. It gets us back to that where we're pushing off our behaviors and we're pushing off the things that we want to do because we're not in our normal rhythm, right? We go on vacation and the food choices and when we wake up and when we go to sleep, like all that becomes different. But, the same thing happens if you have children, the same thing happens in the summer. That's a whole different rhythm. During the fall can be a different rhythm. The winter, because you're not outside as much. I caution you to beware of our reliance on rhythms to create our habits, because rhythms get disrupted. And I really think that there's less and less rhythm to our day-to-day lives. And if we rely on, I just need to get back into that groove of this part of my life, and that groove doesn't come back, we're left waiting. And it stops us from taking action now. So don't worry so much and rely so much on the rhythm, but focus on what you can do. And this brings us to kind of the third point, which is, what are you committed to? And from this, I'll share with you what I'm committed to from a nutrition perspective. So what I mean by this is when everything goes out the window, you're out of your rhythm, you're in a different environment, you're tired, you're thrown off your game, like who knows what it is. What are you committed to doing? And I think that we look so often at nutrition as kind of this, it'd be nice if I did this, but we're not really committed to it. And I don't think you can be committed to too many things. Like if you're truly committed, you can't truly commit to 14 different things. The human brain doesn't work that way. So if you had to pick a couple things, and I would say just start with one, from nutrition or from activity, like what is it that you're committed to doing? And when you break this rhythm and you find that you're not in this rhythm, what you do is you just go back to, I'm committed to this, focus on that, and then you snowball your wins, and then good things start to happen. So for example, me from a nutrition perspective, I'm committed to protein and vegetables. So if I'm going to sit down and have a meal, there's going to be protein, there's going to be vegetables. Like I'm just committed to making that happen. I've ingrained the protein thing for so long. I love the taste of protein and every kind of protein, right? And so I enjoy it. The vegetable thing, it helps me feel full. I have a huge appetite. So I know those are two things I'm committed to. My friend Jason McCarthy, who is the co-founder of GoRuck, Jason is committed to 10,000 steps a day. Like if you follow Jason on social, he is committed to putting on his rucksack, whether it's walking to work, whether it's walking and rucking around when he's taking meetings. It doesn't sit at his office. He's walking around. He's committed to 10,000 steps a day. Like doesn't matter what's going on in his life, he's going to make sure that happens. So from a mental perspective for you, what I'd love you to do is think like, what is it that you're committed to? Like just one thing. I'm going to make this happen. I'm always going to make this happen in my life because it's important. Could be 10,000 steps, could be protein and vegetables, could be getting up at a certain time every day. Like, because if you're committed to get up, then you're going to do something early in the morning. That's the magic of the mornings. But decide mentally, like, what are you committed to? You know, athletes will be like this. They'll be committed to shooting so many free throws every day, or they'll be committed to running a certain distance. When I think of commitment, I was just, whenever I go to Vermont, you know, I grew up in a small town in Vermont and dirt roads. And the road that I live on, when I was I think it was my end of my freshman year. It was the end of my freshman year in high school. I won like this small athletic award, which basically gave me a $50 gift certificate to Sports Authority and to go and buy a piece of sports equipment. And my basketball coach had told me that, you know, the better shape I was in from a conditioning perspective, the easier basketball was going to be. So I thought, well, I need to get running shoes. I'd never owned a pair of shoes just for running. And I never really, you know, kind of run like that before either. So I bought a pair of running shoes and I was committed to running 3 miles every day. And it was from my house down to this log cabin at the end of the street and back. And if I worked as a line cook and as a prep cook. And when I got out, I used to walk out of the back of the kitchen and like 100 yards down this hill was a bike path. And I could run 3 miles on that bike path. And it was like, no matter what happened that summer, I ran 3 miles every single day. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't anything, you know, I didn't have any crazy tracking apps because, you know, it was the mid to late 90s. So there wasn't any of that. It was just every day I'm going to make sure I do this one thing. And I got in the most incredible shape I'd ever been in. And I totally had transformed, you know, my body. I came back to school and I was just in such better shape. I was in such healthier physically, but it was all through this simple commitment of doing the 3 miles every day, no matter what. I also wore out the running shoes, which was pretty cool. So think about mentally, because we can get into overload sometimes. Got to do all these things. I got to do this. I got to count my macros and make sure I'm eating organic, and I got to get in wild blueberries. And there's so many options, we can become overwhelmed. And so just take a minute and think, what's the one thing that I can always be committed to and ensure that that's going to happen? Because the best way to make something happen is to start. And the best way to start is to keep it simple. And if you can think of one simple thing that you're committed to now, and you're going to do that every single day, it's going to make all the difference. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the power of pausing. I find oftentimes, especially when it comes to eating, that we make bad decisions because we get caught up in the moment, right? Because we just get caught up in whether it's our head or our thoughts or the social pressures, whatever it is. And so there's another excerpt from wherever you go, there you are, that I wrote down for this show. And it says, the sheer momentum of this moment will overflow and color the next if you're not careful. And so think about that for a minute. The sheer momentum of this moment is going to overflow and color the next if we're not careful. So if you've ever, this happens, like all of a sudden you're in the kitchen, stressed, and you start snacking on something, you look up and you're like, oh my God, how did I just eat like all these chips and all this hummus, right? Because you weren't present while you were doing it, right? That's a great example of the momentum of that moment carried forward and continued to color whatever else you were doing. And you weren't paying attention or really in control. And those behaviors didn't have anything to do with anything in that moment. It had to do with whatever was stressing you out, whatever you were thinking about previously. And that's where the power of just pausing, I think, comes in and can be so important. That if we can pause, that creates a break. It creates a little bit of space to stop the momentum of whatever we were dealing with before, so we can then make a good decision in the moment regarding our nutrition. So if you're craving something, or if you come in and at the end of the day and you're feeling stressed, or you just got off a bad call and it's got you all worked up, and you're like, it feels good when you're worked up, eating something that tastes delicious. It works, right? It feels good. It's something that's easy to do, but it's not something that you want to do because stress can be everywhere. And if all of a sudden we're eating because of all our stress, we find ourselves in a situation that's not really healthy. And so if you can consciously say, well, I'm going to pause, I'm going to stop the momentum of this moment and not let it carry into my food decisions, or the decision that I'm too tired and I'm too stressed. I can't take 10 minutes to go exercise, or I can't take 20 minutes to go on the bike, or I'm not going to take an extra 7 minutes to cook up the healthy meal that I know I really want to eat, right? So if we can take that moment and pause, create that space, stop the momentum of the negative thoughts or the negative behavior, we're going to prevent that from seeping into what we're really trying to accomplish from a food perspective or from an activity perspective. So this key is really just pause. I like add in a breath, pause. It doesn't need to be this whole dramatic moment, right? Just take a breath, pause, and think, what just happened? What do I want to do moving forward, right? Don't just go with the flow. So the last tip from this, looking at how do we optimize the mental side of our nutrition, is we want to tell ourselves next time. Now, I'm not a huge fan of procrastination, but here is the situation where you want to procrastinate and tell yourself, I'm going to do it next time. So the things that you want to procrastinate on are those moments where you say, I'm too tired to exercise. I'm all worked up. I can't go to sleep now. I'm going to stay up and do whatever. Or they just released my favorite show last week and there are 2 episodes. So I'm going to stay up and I'm going to watch 2 episodes. I'm going to watch 2 hours, knowing that that's going to take you to midnight, but you want to get up at 5 so you can get in your workout. And so when you're put with these opportunities to let the logic of our minds, and our logic mind is probably like the most deadly, right? Give us the rationale to not do what we really want to do, but do something else. Eat the cake. Don't do the workout. Stay out and watch TV. Skip whatever. Skip going for the walk that you planned on so that you can stay at home and do something else with your family because, you feel guilty about not being with them and taking that time for yourself. Whatever it is. I'm sure you could sit here and think in your life of 4 moments where you've let your logic mind rationalize yourself away from taking the steps that you want to take to live a strong, fit, and healthy life and do something else. So when you're found in those moments, what you want to do is just say, well, I could do that, but not this time. I'll just do it next time. Right? I'm too tired to work out. Let me just try. I'll skip my workout next time. I'd really love to have these snacks, but I'm not going to because I already ate the meal I planned. So I'll have those snacks next time. So you're not saying, no, I'm never going to do this. I'm not going to stay up and watch the show. You're like, oh, I'll watch the show, but I'll do it tomorrow night. I'll do it next time. And then go do the thing that you set out to do, the thing that you want to do, the thing that's going to move you towards the health goals that are truly important to you. So just putting that off, procrastinating and saying, well, I'll do that next time. So it's not saying you're not going to do it, right? But it's not saying, oh, I'm not going to eat these snacks. They're forbidden. You're saying, well, I'll eat them, but I'm just going to do it next time, not right now. And keep procrastinating away those unhealthy behaviors. And then that's going to put you in the forefront of continuing to do all the behaviors that you want to do. And if you can keep just putting off the healthy behaviors, if you don't put off the healthy behaviors, if you can keep putting off the unhealthy behaviors, tomorrow is never going to come. You'll just keep putting it off to the next day and to the next day and to the next day. And then eventually, you lose interest in it or you just don't do it. And that's a lot easier in the moment to say, well, I'll just do that next time, than to say, no, I can't do that. That's so bad. I'm never going to have that food. I'll just have those snacks next time because now I want to go do my workout, or now I want to eat the salad that I made because it's delicious. Whatever that is. So that's really the key here, is giving yourself a no, I'll never do this is very difficult. But just punt, just delay the decision, right? Push it off till next time and tell yourself next time I'll do it. So let's recap kind of these 5 key strategies that we talked about. Remind yourself that in the moment, this is it. This meal, this decision about going out and going for a walk, going out and going for a run or a ruck or whatever it is, this is important. This is it. Don't just, skip over and say, I'll start on Monday. This is it. Don't get romanticized by the rhythm of your life. Not everything's going to be perfect. You're not going to get back into that same rhythm that you need, or the perfect rhythm to do everything that you need to do. Is just focus on getting done what you want to get done that's important to you. And don't worry about it following this set rhythm. I think the rhythm of life is a little over-romanticized if you really want to get stuff done. Tell yourself, I'll do that next time, when it comes to unhealthy habits or behaviors or things that you're tempted of doing. You're not going to say, I'm never going to eat those snacks, but you'll say, man, I'm not going to eat them now. I'll do it next time. Take a moment to pause. When you're stuck in the moment and you have to make a decision, don't let the momentum of what you were just experiencing overflow into the current moment and have you make some decision that you wish you wouldn't have made. Take a moment to pause, create some space, and really address that moment with that this is it concept right in the moment, so you're not acting on feelings or emotions that you just had in a previous moment. And the last one is to think about, what are you truly committed to? What's the one, maybe 2 things if you feel like being an overachiever, that you're truly committed to doing? And just make sure you do that every day. Remember, for me, protein and vegetables. I'm committed at every meal to it. You could be like Jason McCarthy, be committed to 10,000 steps a day. Michael Easter, who is a guest on the show, he's committed to writing every day. Gets up every morning, 4 a.m., and he writes. Doesn't know what he's going to do the rest of the time, but he knows he's going to get that in. Figure out what's really important and what you can do and be committed to on a day-to-day basis, and that's going to help drive all kinds of behaviors moving forward. So those are the 5 key tips so you can win the mental battle to live a strong, fit, and healthy life. If you have some other strategies that work for you, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message on social, on Instagram at Mike Roussel, on TikTok at Dr. Mike Roussel, or at MikeRoussel.com. If you haven't already subscribed to the newsletter, make sure you subscribe at MikeRoussel.com. And if you haven't been to SubstanceNutrition.com to get some Neuro Coffee or Synthesis, our new protein powder, you don't know what you're missing out. Hope everybody's having a great day. I'll talk to you next week.